Thanks for logging on to Wayne.com for another edition of Inside the Zone. Tom Davis from the News Sentinel joining us as always. And Tom, because every team is guaranteed one game in the playoffs and they play 9 games in the regular season, after Week 5 we are at the midway point essentially in the season.
Yep.
So let's take a look at what we've seen so far. Who do you think is the best team in the area at this point in the year?
Well, obviously Bishop Dwenger is head and shoulders above everybody at this point. They're 5-0. They really haven't been challenged at all. They won't be challenged for a long time. Even in that season-ending game against Bishop Luers, I'm not sure if they'll be challenged too much. I think it'll be much closer than the 62-0 game last year. But certainly Bishop Dwenger is head and shoulders above everybody at this point in time.
When you take a look at everybody else, you mentioned Bishop Luers. I would think that they would probably be the second best team in the area based on what they've been able to do. Are there any other teams, or is there just a really big drop-off at that point?
Well, I wouldn't say that Bishop Luers is unequivocally the second best team. They're certainly a very good team. They're the #1 team in 2A, but there are a number of teams that are having outstanding seasons. New Haven's undefeated. They're 5-0. Cherubusco's 5-0 and undefeated. Southern Wells is 5-0 and undefeated. And then you have your bigger schools like Homestead and Columbia City that are having special years as well. So I don't think it's an absolute certainty that Bishop Luers is the second best team in the area, but they're right up there with everyone else.
And you mentioned some of those teams, New Haven, Columbia City, teams that are having kind of revival type years. When you look at this point in the season, who have done the best coaching jobs, who would you say has done the best job in the area?
Well, I think it's a 2-horse race in that category. First of all, what Randy Hudgens has done at Columbia City is nothing short of a miracle, and the same can be said about Casey Kolkman down at Bluffton. And both those guys have done it really quickly. It wasn't like they took over 5-6 years ago and it's been a building process. They've just gotten right to work and gotten the kids believing. And Columbia City is contending for the NHC race right now. They're 1 game back. Bluffton was in the NHC race there for a while, but then they lost last week. So. Or I'm sorry, ACAC.
ACAC.
I misspoke there. But nevertheless, they're 3-2, and Casey Kolkman has done a magnificent job. But if I had to say one guy, I would say Randy Hudgens. He's 8-9 overall in his 2 years at Columbia City. And given the history of that program over the last 5, 6, 7 years, that's nothing short of just shocking.
Yeah, hard to argue with either of those guys. Columbia City got a big game coming this week. We'll talk about that in just a second. But when you take a look at the entire scope of things, player-wise, because we have some D1 commits. Who player-wise have you seen that, in your estimation, at the midpoint of the season, is the player of the year for Northeast Indiana?
Well, again, that's a very difficult award to pinpoint to one guy. I mean, if you're just going to base it on talent, I think you have to look at Bishop Dwenger's Ramon Wright or Bishop Dwenger's Tony Springman. Springman's committed to Notre Dame. Ramon Wright's committed to Stanford. But having said that, you can't really disrespect Tavon Hurst of New Haven, who's got over 1,200 yards rushing and is one of the state's best running backs. And so, if I had to name one guy, I would say Tavon Hurst. #1, he's blowing everybody away with his rushing totals, and #2, his New Haven team is undefeated and contending for a conference championship right now. So I would certainly go with Tavon Hurst, but certainly don't discount Ramon Wright, Connor Kasser of Leo, Logan Rare, Columbia City, Zach Terrell of Homestead, A.J. Dove of East Noble. I mean, there's 7 or 8 kids that you could give this award to.
I'm surprised because Hurst was a question mark coming into the season. They graduated Frank Lloyd up there
Right.
over there in New Haven, so people weren't sure. It was funny talking to Jim Rowland at Media Day. He said, "Oh, we've got a guy I think that can replace him," and you're like, "Sure, coach, whatever."
Right.
And this guy comes in, and as you said, over 1,200 yards here early in the season.